You are tuned in to My Pastor Said. I am your host, JJ Simmons, and my special guest today is pastor of Rock Youth Church. I have the pleasure of serving with him, under him, and such an incredible human being. He serves at the Fountain of Praise Church, and I've known him for a couple of years. Gosh, maybe about 5-6 years, maybe.
Seems about right.
But just a great human being, and so happy to have him on the show today. He is a father of 3 little human beings that I get to see at church every other Sunday, and he is the husband to an incredible woman whose name is Ebony. Please welcome Pastor Will Cumby on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
I know. I was like, is there going to be a sound effect that's going to be like, shh? And I'm like, yeah.
Pastor Will, you've been a pastor for about 19 years? Is that right?
I think so. 19. Yeah, I think that's about right. 19, 20, somewhere around in there.
So when did you start pastoring?
Wow. You know, that word there says a lot. Because when you say pastor, there's a lot of implications with the word pastor, right? You think shepherd, but I would say I've been ministering since I was in high school.
Really?
And so I was in high school. I graduated in 98. I went to Oral Roberts from there, graduated in 2002. And then I came back to Houston and was serving at my church then. So since 2002. But as far as like full time, probably, I don't know, maybe 2004.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang. You look so young. It's like,
You know,
I've been preaching since I was 5.
He's gracious. The Lord is gracious.
Okay, so tell me what the experience was when you were called to preach, though. Like, is this something where it was just like, I'm going to do ministry, then all of a sudden, hey, I'm a pastor? Or was it like a moment?
Man, so I was sitting at the bus stop and I got this page because, you know, people weren't calling folk back then. The Lord paged me. And so I looked at it and I was like,
I'm done.
J-E. Oh, well, then let me go ahead and reach out to this brother because he sent me that good page. And I flipped it open because that was the kind we had back then to flip. And
I can't.
And I texted back. I said, hey, man, holla at me. But no, really, the way it came for me is I grew up in church. My mom worked for the church that I grew up in. And my grandmother was just the grandmother of a church, right?
Yeah.
So we did church all the time. And so I can't say that it was like I had this moment where the skies cracked open and he was like, you, my son, in whom I'm well pleased, teach the nations. From a young age, I've always loved the gospel and I've loved the scriptures and I love the stories. And anytime I got the opportunity, but probably after high school is when I was in college and I had lost my job and I went to volunteer at my church and they asked me to help.
Wow. What were you doing before?
I had the job that everyone gets when they graduate from college.
You worked at Wendy's?
Enterprise Rent-A-Car.
Oh.
Everybody works at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Ask me. I bet you got about 4 friends that worked at Enterprise. Yeah, see? Everybody
that is true, though.
I worked at Enterprise when I graduated from college in the management trainee program.
Ooh.
But from there, it wasn't working for me. And so I just had I had a gap moment and just was like, I'm just going to go volunteer at my church.
Yeah. If you weren't pastoring, what would you be doing? Not still working at Enterprise.
No. My degree is in marketing, and so I wanted to make commercials.
Really?
And I wanted to do anything in that arena.
Wow. Yeah. Do you think you get to transfer some of those skills over to
I
the
think
Rocky
so.
Church?
I think so. So my degree is actually in mass communications with the emphasis in public relations and advertising. I wanted to be the guy that when people messed up, they would call and be like, hey, bro, can you write a letter for me? I'd be like, got you. Or can you go and talk to the people for me? I'm like, not a problem.
Yeah.
See, what had happened was I wanted to be that guy.
Yeah.
So I do it at the church in regards to I have the most fantastic product ever. And yeah, that might be uncomfortable for some people to hear it that way. But I'm not selling Jesus. But what I am telling them is I've got something that you need.
Yeah.
And it is a life with Jesus Christ. And so when you know what you're selling and when you are passionate about it, you'll do it every day.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
That's the way I look at it is I get to tell people every day, like, I've got the best thing. And if you don't have it, you need it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
What's the toughest part about being a pastor?
When you go from burying members to burying friends.
Ooh, yeah.
So it's one thing to say, oh, well, Sister So-and-so passed away. Let's go serve. But then when it's like, that person used to like watch my kids, or
Yeah,
that person used to look out for me when I needed something. And or, hey, I taught that kid how to drive and now I've got to speak at their funeral.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's hard.
The funerals, and I see, obviously I follow you on social media too. So I get to see the funerals, and then I get to see what makes you really happy, which is doing weddings, right?
I love weddings.
You are like the wedding masters. Anybody need
I'll let your boy.
a pastor for a wedding?
I do them.
I'm waiting, because when the Lord comes, because at this point in life, he's going to have to knock at my door personally.
He can send you a page. You pull that pager out.
Let me
He's
go
still
get
paging
my
folk.
two-way real
Go
quick.
get your two-way.
But when that happens,
Yeah.
and he finally brings me that one, okay, where he's holding his hand,
right there.
Jillian, here he is. I'm going to call you.
Holla at your boy.
I'm going to call you. It's going to be, I want to get married in the woods.
I can see that. You're there in the tiny house.
You
often.
know me. I
Right.
just want
I'm
trees
like, oh, look, we in the trees.
everywhere. Anyway,
Leave that all the way alone.
so you are a sneakerhead,
A little bit.
and I've picked this topic just for you because I was like, we'll love some sneakers. Today he has on some very special sneakers for
Hispanic Heritage Month.
Didn't even know Nike made some Hispanic Heritage Month sneakers.
I got these. I got the Dia de Muertos. I got a couple pairs
I
of
look
them.
up to you, bro. I'm like, if I could just get one more paycheck.
Man.
But I figured you would be great for this because I know you love shoes. And this man named Ben Cumby, some people may know his Instagram page called Preachers and Sneakers.
Yep.
And he also has a website too. But I came across it a couple of years ago. And it was funny, like it was just like on my Explore page or something. And they were showing a pastor who used to live here. And his shoes were like $1,200.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was like, dang, those some nice shoes. And I was like, $1,200. I won't be able to get those.
Can't do it.
And then I go to the comments. When I see posts, right, we go straight to the comments. Like, what are people saying? I need to know what people are saying. So I saw people who were on there like, this is a disgrace. And why does this pastor have $1,200 shoes? And that is just, it's not honorable. And then I saw people on there who were like, why y'all worried about the shoes that he got on, right? And so I have my own take on this.
Okay.
This is what, and I could be wrong, so let's have this conversation.
Okay.
What I think may irritate me the most is that if your church is suffering and you aren't providing them with tools or education on money, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Where it's like, and they see you with, we see pastors. I don't know who the pastor was earlier this year that had on all the jewelry. You got $1 million worth of jewelry and stuff. But your church is suffering. The people, your congregation is suffering. Then that kind of makes me feel a little way where I'm like, your people, they ain't got no tools. I ain't saying you got to give them money, but can you give them some tools? You the storehouse, right?
Right.
But I wanted to know what your thoughts are. Like, why are people so concerned with it, and should they be concerned with it?
Well, I think the first problem is that people take the what's on your mind that Facebook asks people literally.
Yes.
They feel like because I have the internet in a couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you what's on my mind.
Yeah.
When I love to say everybody has something to say, but that doesn't mean everybody has something worth saying.
Yeah.
And as long as there's the internet, there's going to be trolls. There's always going to be somebody because they want to have an opinion, and people get paid to have an opinion.
Yes, they do.
There are whole careers where my job is to bother you in such a degree that it creates a reaction.
Yeah.
And then the more reactions I create, the more money I get.
Oh, yeah.
So my whole job, if that weren't true, there would not be those little magazines at the checkout at the grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
Their whole thing is sensationalism.
Tabloids and
I
all
have
that.
to blow things up in order to get attention. So me shining darkness or shining negativity on you gives me money. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But when it regards to ministers or preachers who have expensive shoes and should they have it, here's the thing. I think the challenge is you got to understand context. You got to understand context. If this gentleman is ministering in a church in an impoverished community, and the average income is subpar. I doubt he's going to be rocking $1,000 tennis shoes. It just doesn't make sense. The problem is we're complaining about people who are in communities or in spaces where that's the average income and people are wearing that. Mm-hmm. So why are you surprised? The problem is that they're not in your income range. And so because you're judging from a different space, that's like me complaining about subways living in Houston.
Yeah.
I can complain about it all day, but at the end of the day, I don't live in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how am I complaining about something that doesn't truly affect me?
Yeah, that's good.
But now, if this said pastor is in a community that's urban or rural and he's wearing that, then obviously you've got to. Here's the truth. Here's the truth. I like to. What does it say? Oh, if any good shepherd should smell like his sheep. Right. So if you don't smell like your sheep, if you don't have that scent where your sheep are like, this is my people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you're not going to have people in the first place.
There'll be a disconnect.
There's going to be a disconnect.
Yeah. That's understandable. I wonder if we should be less worried about what sneakers somebody has on and more concerned about what they are offering or what they are actually preaching, because you got pastors that may look broke and they out here preaching from I don't know where, but it ain't the word. And it's like, oh, well, at least there's this idea that pastors are supposed to be humble. Yeah. And the humbleness comes from your appearance, your house, and I know pastors that are like that, like these people out here buying houses. And you're like, okay, but how is a pastor supposed to live? Is it like, I like that the article, I sent you an article about this, because in the article, the guy said, I just spent $1,500 on a MacBook.
Yeah.
Can I equate that to a pastor who just spent $1,500 on some shoes? You know what I mean? Like I could have got a deal for $200. You know what I mean? Like
it's perspective. The reason I have so many pairs of tennis shoes, the reality is, my shoes get your attention. My conversation keeps it.
That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's anything in life. What are you doing to get the attention?
Yeah.
Well, I know that if I'm standing on a stage, the first thing you see is my feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because you're there, I'm here.
Yeah.
And so when you see it now, I'm like, now what am I going to do to keep it?
Yeah. That's good.
Right. That's just all that is a way to grab your attention.
And you do grab people's attention. Let me tell you, because, Pastor will bring out some words, and this is in youth church, because I'm like, hold on, Pastor, let me get my phone because I need to Google that real quick. But I love that you are able to really connect with the young people, and they do. Of course, I see y'all having sneaker conversations. You talk to my daughter about sneakers all the time. She's trying to up her game, but she needs a job to really up her sneaker game.
Man, my son needs a job, and my son and my daughter.
I'll tell you. But I think that you do such a dynamic job helping these young people to bring them to Christ. What do you think makes a great youth pastor? Not just a pastor, but just a youth pastor.
Relatability. I don't think age is the deciding factor, because what they want to know is, Here's Nelson Mandela says, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. If you talk to a man in a language that he speaks, it goes to his heart. And so in order for me to speak the language of these students, I have to go from come see to let's go.
Yeah.
Here's the truth. The pandemic caused teenagers to have a reckoning with their relationship with Jesus Christ. And it had to be, am I serving the God of my grandparents, or is he mine? And so they're going through this thing called deconstruction, where they're just kind of saying, I don't know, because everything that you guys told me has now caused ambiguity. And where there's ambiguity, there's fear. And so now it's not and we tend to confuse deconstruction with denouncing their faith.
Right.
And they're not denouncing it. They're saying, this is just what you're saying doesn't line up with how you're living, so I need to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And so what I realized is the pulpit is portable. right? And for me to just say, okay, well, I got pizza and I've got popcorn and I've got this artist, you should come. And they're like, I can watch it at home. So I think what makes a good youth pastor is one that says, in order for me to be influential, the Bible puts it this way. Paul says, I became like all so that some may be saved. And Jesus often did not preach from pulpits. He was actually in the place where the people were. So a good youth pastor says, I must be amongst the people. I've got to be there. I've got to go. I've got to be involved, and not so that I can be seen, but so that people can see Christ.
Oh, yeah.
So when I go, I do a lot with high school football teams. I do a lot. Sometimes I might be at the school just, how can I help serve? Is it moving chairs? Is it just being a hallway monitor or something?
Yeah.
And it's going to a game and not going to be the youth pastor, but going to root for the team.
Right.
And they're like, oh, so you're actually in the community? Right. The problem is we have big churches in the community who are not in the community. And so I'm like, you got to be more than the big edifice on the corner. You've got to be a big edifice that's edifying the people that are on the corner.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And that's what makes a good youth pastor, the ones that are like, okay, I'll tell a story and I'll be done. It'll be real quick. There was this inmate that escaped. And the officer was like chasing the inmate down, right? Pull over. And the inmate just kept running. Just kept going. And so he turns the lights on, kept running. He's fussing, pull over, won't do it. Finally, they get the inmate in captivity. They were able to get it. And I'm reading the article, and at the end of the article, the author says, why didn't the officer just yell, whoa? And I was like, what?
Whoa.
What happened was the inmate that escaped was a horse. And so the officer was yelling everything that he felt the horse should do to stop. But the reality was the horse didn't understand the language of the officer. And so we're trying to get kids to stop, but they don't know we're using our language. We're using Christianese terms. We're using things, and the kids are like,
yeah, it's over their head.
What?
Yeah. And there are old school pastors that are like, some are even totally against having a separate church. No, the kids need to be in here. They need to understand. They can understand. And it's like, man, they are so disconnected. And I can see the outcome of kids who are there and not understanding and not able to really sink it in versus kids that have their own separate thing. And then they graduate, right, into, regular church.
And I think that's cool to have them in the main sanctuary. If that's your programming, that, hey, we listen to the pastor, that's fine. But you still have to create space for them to see and be seen. Yeah. Right? So what does that look like? That's small groups. That's creating things where it's like, hey, well, on Sunday, this is what we do. Yeah. We're main sanctuary Sunday. But we allow spaces for you guys, because here's the truth. For individuals to come into an awareness of who they are, they need to be in a space where they can ask questions. Yeah. And sometimes Sunday morning isn't the space where I can ask a question, depending on your ministry. They need those small group times. So if you're like, hey, we don't have a youth group, but we do have small group moments where we can get together and talk through our issues and talk through things. That's a question. If you look in scripture, there were multiple times where they would say, Rabbi this and Rabbi this. Well, don't you understand that questions breed growth? Challenge breeds growth. If you're not in a space where you can speak, then you're just accept everything as truth. Oh, yeah. And just because you're loud doesn't mean you're right. Right. So I need to be in a space where I can be like, let me ask that about this. Yeah, okay,
which I also love about Rock Youth Church. Yeah. Because we are making space for that. Can we go back to the conversation about young people leaving the church real quick? Yes. Because I remember us having a conversation about this, and I believe you had said one of the reasons why young people were leaving the church had something to do with like, well, you told me to pray about my situation and that it would change, and then I did it. And then nothing happened. Yeah. So like feeling like disappointed or defeated or whatever. What are some of the other reasons why young people are like,
one of the reasons is, do you remember, they have it now. Have you ever seen like Rate My Professor and things like that?
No,
So it's this thing where in college, you can actually go on and Google your professor, right? So
glad you told me.
We have in this day and age, you can't just tell a story from the pulpit and they'd be like, oh, that's true. Because they're going to be like, let me Google that real quick, right? Yeah. So what's happening is, and sometimes these leaders are one way in the sanctuary and they lead this life outside of it, right? And they're like, well, my page is private. Don't you know these kids are smart enough to still find you? I don't care how much of a secret you try to be, they will find you. Yeah. And so what we're finding out is these kids are saying, you're this way on Sunday, but Monday through Saturday, you're somebody else. And so I phrased it as we have too many stage models and not enough role models, right? You're so good. You can do the show. You can tap dance. You can tell me this. But like when you were going through something, you disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
You told me to pray about it when I was going through it. But when you were going through it, that's not what you did.
Right.
And so like one of the things is I keep my page open because I want them to see, hey, when I'm hurting, this is what I'm dealing with. Or if when I'm doing great, this is what it looks like. Another reason that I believe kids are leaving the church is because when we invite them in, we ask, hey, who did you invite today? And it's not, I'm happy you're here.
Yeah.
It's always like, well, who did you bring? Well, am I
not enough?
And so if the youth group is small, and the youth pastor's always like, hey, man, how come you didn't invite anybody? Man, I just wish we had more people. I would do more if we had more people here. They're like, am I not good enough? Mm-hmm. If you're faithful over a few, he'll make you rule over much. We've got to get to a space where, especially in this post-pandemic reality, that if you've got 3, let me rock that 3 until 3 becomes 13 and 13 becomes 30. Yeah. But I'm going to be faithful over this 3.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they stop coming because they feel like, well, if I'm not good enough with 3, what makes me good enough at 30?
Right, right. We got work to do. As the church with a capital C, we have so much work to do, because if we don't get this together, you'll have a lot of people lost.
We will.
We have a lot of people lost right now, and but I see it as adults, and what I see is adults who are going through church hurt from when they were young people who felt like that. I wasn't good enough, or I couldn't have conversations about certain topics because church doesn't want to talk about it. And so I didn't have a place to go, And so now I get to see them as adults, and I'm like, man, I want to see these kids win. I want to see them become advocates and ambassadors for Christ and be able to, really, because they're going to make change in the world, whether good or bad, right? And so we want to see them on the other side of that.
Absolutely.
It's going to take work.
Yeah. The Bible calls us to be living epistles, which means we may be the only Bible that people see or read.
Yeah.
And so, and even going back to the church hurt thing, the church didn't hurt you. That person at the church hurt you.
Right.
So you got to find a space. I've been to grocery stores where they treated me bad, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna stop eating. I'm just gonna find a better grocery store. I've been to restaurants where I was like, I think you gave me a stomach virus.
Yeah.
I didn't stop eating.
Yeah.
I went to a different restaurant. So sometimes the places where you eat can make you sick.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that food is bad.
Yeah.
It's just that restaurant isn't good for you.
How as a youth can I tell my parents I'm not getting fed correctly at this place? Is that a real valid question though? Like, can I be at youth church and feel like I'm not getting anything out of it? I've gone to churches, big churches here in the city. I would never forget, I visited one and my daughter played Uno the whole time, and I was like, Uno.
That's what I did.
Did that help? And I was just so traumatized. Like, I'm just dramatic anyway, but I just couldn't believe it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't for this church to be so great. And the main church is, you're getting fed, but then this, like, how can a young person come to their parent and say, hey, there's something else that I want, that I need.
This is a dialogue generation. This generation has no problem telling you what's on their mind. I've learned that. I think for the student, it's having that intestinal fortitude to say, Mom, Dad, I really want to know more about this Jesus, and I'm not getting it at my youth church.
Yeah.
And that's where I encourage them. There are several programs in schools. There's Youth for Christ. There's FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. There's Young Life, to find a space where you can be fed. Or if you're finding that you're two things. If you say, well, what's your relationship to your youth pastor? Mm-hmm. Have you said anything? When I first started in youth ministry, I thought I was killing it. I was like, and one of the kids was like, bro, like, it's good, but I need you to go a little deeper. And I was like, fair.
Yeah.
Right? That going back to what makes a good youth pastor is having that relationship with those students to the point where it's like, hey, holla at me.
Yeah.
In our youth department, we have a teen council. They're like my narcs. I hate to say that, but I'm 44 years old. I'm not a teenager, but I'm like, hey, so holla at me. Is that hitting or am I missing?
Right.
And they're like, hey, so can you go? Okay.
Yeah.
But also, if you're seeing you can't speak to the youth pastor and you're doing that, but we're seeing that the main sanctuary is hitting for you. Sit in the main sanctuary.
Yeah. Then it's time for you to go there.
Step on over there.
But that's good. Just, I hear you saying, like, feel comfortable enough that you can have those conversations. Parents need to be open to hear it, to, creating the space for them to hear it, and be open with your youth pastor too. Like, hey, bruh, or these are some things I want to learn. So,
yeah, here's what I want to know about. Here's what I want to. And if you're in a good youth ministry, it should be a space for you to ask questions and say, hey, can we talk about this?
That's good.
Can we do this? And a good youth minister should be constantly polling his group to be like, hey, what's going on? What are some things? Because you heard me say this before. If you're the only person giving yourself advice, you're always going to be right and you're probably wrong. Well, if you're the only person that's giving yourself feedback on what you're going to teach on Sunday, I mean, you probably like it, but you got to remember, other people, like at my house, I'm dairy. I can't eat dairy, but the rest of my family does. But if I never say anything about it, I'm going to be sick every week. Like, bro, I wish they would say something. I didn't tell you, look, Daddy can't do macaroni and cheese, so can we switch it up?
Oh, man. That's funny. I'm sorry to hear that, too, by the way. You're really missing out on great macaroni. All right. Wrapping up our interview, we always do something called Pick a Card.
Love it.
You get to choose which card you would like. Here's one that just has a Bible on it. Mm-hmm. Here's one that has 2 minutes and a little pastor behind the pulpit. Man. And here's a musical card. Which one would you like to pick, sir?
Music.
Sing a little bit
of
your favorite gospel song from when you were younger.
When I was younger?
I don't know.
There's so many. Like, which generation is younger? Like, in college, I was Pages of Life. I'm 44.
Okay.
In college, it was Pages of Life, which will go down in history. You can ask Pastor Carlos, who was on earlier. I guarantee you, if he were sitting right here, he'd be like, Pages of Life.
Okay,
that was
so let me hear it, because I don't think I know Pages of Life.
You don't know Pages of Life? That was Fred Hammond, the double disc. That was the one where he said, but at midnight, with the Paul and Silas. You don't remember? Oh, my.
I think so. Well, you have to sing some of it. That's what you have to do. You got to sing
That was Blessed was on that album. Okay, but then when we go back further, you got Kirk Franklin when Stomp came out when I was in high school.
You can't sing Stomp because that's too easy.
And then going back to early childhood, we would do like, ain't no rock gonna cry in my place. As long as I'm alive to glorify his holy name. Right? Like, we did things like that. They would they'd be like, ain't no bird, right? Gonna sing him. Like, we had songs like that. Like,
I was thinking like this little light of mine.
Oh no. The church I grew up in, the pastors were musicians, so they would come up with the songs, and that's how we learned the scriptures. That's how I learned. What's my scripture verse? Romans 12, 1 and 2. I beseech ye, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yes.
That was a song for me growing up.
Oh, wow.
They would say, be not conformed to this. It was like a rap. We would sing it on Sunday.
I knew someone would rap on this show.
Yeah.
And here it is.
I think some of that has to come back too. Like, it has to be in a way, I think anybody born 79, 80 right there, they know all these scripture verses because of Fred Hammond.
Yeah.
All of Fred Hammond songs taught us the word of God. Weapon. Yeah, we learned prodigal son, come back to this. We learned it from Pages of Life. And, anyway.
Man. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, you actually participated. You sang a little bit.
Heck yeah, I'm in.
Pastor Carlos tried to freestyle on the show. We wouldn't let that happen this time, but maybe next time. Maybe y'all could both come back and be on together.
I'm in. I don't know if you're ready for all that action.
I don't know if we're ready either. But Pastor Will, I truly love you. I love who you are in this world and what you give to people. You are such a blessing to me and to my daughter and to all of the youth that are in the church. I am so honored to be able to serve under you. And every now and then I get to come in and fill in for Pastor Will and teach to the kids, which is so awesome. And you're helping me with where I know God has called me to be. Yeah. And I'm just so grateful for your life.
And we're grateful for you too, man.
Thanks. And where can people find you on the gram?
You can find me. Now this is terrible, but I got on Instagram late before I didn't know you're supposed to come up with something cool.
Oh,
like I should have done like We'll See One Day or something like that, but I didn't. Mine's just We'll See 27.
Okay, that's your line number.
No, well, my line number is 1 because it's a long story. Nevertheless, because I'm a strong 5'5", 5'6" in my church shoes, but that's why I was the ace on the line. But 27 because I was born on the 27th. So We'll See 27 is on Instagram and on Twitter /X.
No one forgets your birthday.
Man, it's a whole thing. 727. But We'll See 27, and then on Facebook, William Cumby. But good luck finding me there because I'm rarely on there. But I am on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm on TikTok, and I'm always posting.
Yeah, you have great posts. I'm
love
proud
it.
of you. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Man, listen, I tell you, sometimes there are things I post because the reality is people can't dream about things they haven't seen. And so some kids have never seen what a mom and dad together looks like. Some people have never seen a dad love on their daughter.
Yes.
And so if they can see it, then they can achieve it.
Yes.
So if I can show it to you and never talk to you, I've still done my job.
Yeah. Pastor Will, thank you for being on the show today, brother.
Blessings.
And that is our episode of My Pastor Said.